Well, you've heard it, and we are now welcoming to the stage Sheryl Wohlford, the president and co-owner of Automation Plus, and Steve Dixon, the president of PB Hoydale. Welcome, Sheryl and Steve. And while you're settling in, Jeremy, I want to ask you to start. If people here were going to take one thing away from your last slide to think about, that maybe what would make them be most optimistic and what would make them be most pessimistic?
For optimism, I think businesses are a lot more optimistic because of their finances, right? What we want businesses to be is profit seeking, and that's exactly what they're doing. We want them to be rewarded to do that. And because of that, I think they're ready to find opportunities and to invest. The question is, where are they going to invest? Where are they going to move next? So that's our point of optimism. For not being as optimistic, it's really consumer side, right? If we see incomes in some parts, that means there's a lot of consumers within this market here that have weak wages, that are having a difficult time. It's much different for them than it is for the business side.
Sheryl and Steve, I want you to answer this too. As you think about your own businesses, what are some of the key national, industrial, global indicators that you look at as signs for future growth, and are those signs positive or negative? So, Sheryl?
Okay. One of the things that we frequently look at is machine tool orders and capacity of manufacturing. And so if you're going to buy equipment to make parts, you're most likely going to need equipment to mark your parts. So that's a critical indicator for us. And right now, our two main sectors of aerospace and food are positive. So we are optimistic.
Okay, good. Steve?
And from our perspective, you've heard it talked about quite a bit today, is the oil pricing. We are a company that sells petroleum and industrial equipment. Basically gas pumps and other things that move fluid product. And so we've heard some about how the lower oil price is a plus. For our retail gasoline customers, that's a big win. They've been experiencing some good profit gains. We're seeing more and more equipment being purchased, and there are some technological pieces that will be coming along down the road that will drive some purchases for us. The negative side is that we also do a lot of work with folks in the oil field, and those people are not really shutting down production, but they are definitely not exploring. And so the explosive growth we'd seen in the last couple of years in the oil patch has definitely slowed down and has some impact on our secondary customer base. Okay.
Jeremy, you talked about the labor supply, and I've heard a friend from Spirit recently talking about their concerns with baby boomers aging out of the workforce, and a lot of skilled workers, a lot of intellectual capital walking out the door. What do you see in labor supply, and how are you advising companies on that? And then Sheryl and Steve, I want you to talk about labor supply in your own areas.
Well, actually, last spring we did the WIRE event, and the whole conversation was about an aging workforce in manufacturing. So we have quite a bit of information there, and a professor at WSU that has done that as his core research. So if you want more information, didn't have really plan on talking about this, but there is a great resource at WSU to talk about what happens in economies and how they change going forward. So what are some of the issues in this aging workforce? Well, you see, think about the manufacturing side. That's where you have some of the skill sets, not only on the floor, but also in the management teams. And there is a problem, that transfer of knowledge, of getting the next generation ready for it. What is happening is that baby boomers are retiring, is giving opportunity for the Generation X and millennials to take over. I think trying to go into much detail over how to handle some of that is a little bit more beyond the scope of this panel discussion right now. But there are ways to start looking at that transition between generations. There are ways to start thinking about it. When you're talking about some of that labor supply, not besides manufacturing, you get over that professional services, which I was indicating. The problem there is we need more people to either go through the educational process and get the business degree so they can fill those demands, or we need to be able to attract them, and we're having a hard time attracting some of those people in that skill set. Now, one observation here is this. We talked to some businesses when we were going forward. We have a lot of people in this community that have been in the same position, not much raises because of this weak environment, and they're looking for a new opportunity. And instead of just being able to move up in their own firm because there's not a lot of growth, or up in their own industry, they're having to switch industries. We're seeing quite a bit of that more here than we see that churn in the labor market at the national level. They're switching industries and switching occupations because they want to move up. So there's this lateral move that's happening because of this slower market that's happening here.
Steve, your company is operating in a half dozen different locations. So talk about what's going on in Wichita, and is it different in Wichita?
It definitely is. We've been seeing, we operate throughout Kansas and Oklahoma and western Missouri, and we've seen markets in our Garden City office is blowing up and going crazy. They're very busy. There's things going on in that area all the time. Kansas City market is beginning to gain steam. Our Oklahoma City office is by far our busiest office, employs the largest number of our employees. A lot of that was driven by oil boom, and we'll see how, just Jeremy talked a little bit about what the longer term ramifications are of lower oil prices down there. However, Wichita has remained steady and strong. I mean, for us, it's been one of our most consistent markets. Things don't really change a lot. They're not big boom, but there's not been a long, slow decline either. A lot of that is attributed to the employee base that we have. It's been very long-term, very consistent, very steady. And we're going to be seeing some turnover in that here over the next several years, and that will be one of the challenges we face is how do we attract new talent into the business long-term.
Sheryl, as you and Doug are looking at your labor force, and what are you seeing for the future? How are you going to fill those spots?
Well, and we're always, as a very small business, we're always at a pay and benefit deficit with going up against the big guys. So we have had great success in working with Wichita State and grabbing some young engineers and having them on a trial basis as they're in college, and then transition into those roles. So it's just going to be key for technology and manufacturing and trying to attract a young workforce.
In looking at the early discussions being held in the Blueprint for Regional Economic Growth, there's a lot of discussion about the need to move toward more advanced manufacturing techniques and advanced materials. Jeremy, what are you seeing going on in those sectors, and are there ways we can speed that along?
For advanced manufacturing, well, so the innovation side clearly is one function to advance that along. The university's investments there, getting professors engaged with businesses so that it's not just an internal thought process, but you have that quicker iterative process of figuring out where it works, where innovation doesn't work, could help accelerate that advanced manufacturing component to it.
And Steve, what are you looking at in terms of changes in your processes?
That's a great question. Really, the biggest thing for us is an increased need for highly technical, skilled workers. We do a lot of work with point-of-sale systems. We do a lot of work on, believe it or not, a gas pump is a fairly technologically advanced piece of equipment. And so we have to have people that are going to be able to come into our business that not only want to have that technological background, that technological desire to learn and to continue to grow, but also are willing to work outside in the cold, in the heat. And those are challenges we face in really attracting that right type of person that wants to take on that very specific type role.
Sheryl, your company services a number of different industries like medical and food and electronic connectors. What are you seeing in the health of some of your industries that are your customers?
You know, medical is really getting ready to take off due to some federal mandates on serialization of every medical device and pharmaceutical product in any medical facility. So we think medical will be healthy. Aerospace, obviously, commercial is great. Lots of parts need to be marked to go on lots of airplanes. The military is declining, but holding its own, again, because of some requirements that they are forced to be in. So, like it or not, some of the government forced regulations, which we'd prefer not to have, are helping drive some of our industries and keeping them in a positive state.
Well, I'd like about another hour of this panel, but now it's time for us all to go back and put into action what we've been learning this morning. So I want to thank our panelists. Let's give them a warm round of applause.